Yeah, thanks guys. My name is John Wilkie. Run a small consulting business in northern New South Wales, macadamias and avocados. But today we're talking about a project we did last year. And yeah, the title of this presentation is Roadmap for Enhancing Yield Consistency in the Australian Avocado Industry. It was undertaken through the project workshop and roadmap for a way forward for irregular bearing. You'll notice right from the start that we've tried to move away from terminology like irregular and alternate bearing, move towards the terminology consistent yield, consistency of production. Some key take-home points that I'd like you to think about at the end. To develop this roadmap, we tried to use a rigorous process with a high level of industry consultation and a high level of scientific input to develop the final document, the final research strategy or roadmap. We've changed the terminology to talk about yield consistency and how it impacts on key areas of crop production and crop development affect yield consistency. It's also important to remember that this area of avocado yield consistency is very complex. There's many factors involved, and they vary with orchard characteristics and growing regions. So first, just an overview of the project. The overall aim was to develop a pathway for funding future investments in this area of alternate and irregular bearing. And yeah, high levels of industry engagement, high levels of scientific input based on sound scientific principles. We also wanted to develop awareness within the industry that we'd actually done this work. So the project team was myself, Renata from DPI, Queensland DPI, and Bridie from Queensland DPI. One of the key activities in the project was developing a project reference group, which had a high level of input into steering where we went, and also giving us the final go ahead for the document at the end. The reference group was included growers from as many regions in the country as we could get, particularly North Queensland and WA. We also had an independent scientist on the panel, Professor Phil Brown from Bundaberg, and Mary from AAL and Tom from Board Innovation. This is an overview of the process we used to develop the roadmap. First, there were a couple of activities that helped us develop underlying information. The first of these was the literature review. So we tried to review the factors affecting alternate and irregular bearing that were already known in the literature. We also did pre-workshop surveys. The main one of those was a domestic Australian survey, but there were also some international input from international people as well. Then the main activity was the actual workshop that we held in Brisbane. So this was a range of growers, scientists from around the country and internationally to give everyone as much information as we could get on these issues. We had discussion sessions and co-design sessions. Then we put all of this information from the literature review, survey and workshop into the draft roadmap. We had a number of feedback opportunities for industry to provide feedback, and then we published it in the final report. First up, we'll just give you a bit of a taste from the survey, some of the main results. So the main purpose of this survey, some of you potentially contributed to it, was to gather insights and perceptions from Australian avocado growers on irregular and alternate bearing issues specific to their region and farm. We tried as hard as we could to get responses from all growing regions around the country, and we did achieve that. There was a total of 50 responses spread across the growing regions. These are just the results of two of the questions on whether the grower believed whether their orchard was affected by irregular and alternate bearing. These are the results averaged across all of the growing regions, but it didn't change enormously between the growing regions, which was interesting. So basically, about 75% of growers believed that irregular bearing was either a moderate or significant, or sorry, medium, had either a medium or a high impact in their orchard. And the same for alternate bearing. The growers believed that, yeah, alternate bearing either had a medium or a high impact on their orchard. We did wonder whether this is potentially where we started to wonder where there was a little bit of confusion between around these terms of irregular and alternate bearing. So this was sort of a step along the path to moving away from this terminology. But yeah, the main point from this is that most growers believed that it is a significant issue in their region, in their orchard. The next sort of foundational activity we did to develop knowledge or to summarise knowledge was to do a literature review. Some of you may be aware that about 10 years ago there was another irregular bearing project that was run by Tony Wiley. As part of that project, Tony did a literature review, and his review was done in great detail and covered many, many topics. We decided that there's no point in duplicating this, so we tried to focus on areas that some areas were not looked at in great detail by Tony, so we focused on those areas. We also looked at areas where there'd been significant research in the 10 years between the two reviews, and we also looked at relevant research in other tree crops. So what this resulted in was a review that was largely about physiology of crop load and carbohydrate allocation within the tree. So just some highlights of the Brisbane workshop. Held in Brisbane across 3 days, so it was 2 full days of workshop activity. It was fairly intense. We had 8 growers attending, which represented 14% of Australian avocado production. 8 scientists, including 2 international scientists presenting via webinar and 1 New Zealand scientist who attended in person. We had 2 consultants and 4 Horn Innovation AL reps, and yeah, the whole thing included presentations, discussions, co-design sessions. This is the workshop group here. You might recognise Ben Norrish from WA, Clayton, North Queensland, Harley speaking today. We even got Simon Newell out of retirement for a day. I'll just give you a snapshot quickly of some of the presentations. John Tyers presented to us on irregular and alternate bearing from an industry, production and marketing perspective, which was a great insight to have. Inaki Hamaza from Spain presented to us his presentation is where are all the flowers gone? So Inaki presented on this idea that many of us see these high levels of flowering, but then really minimal fruit set. Inaki was talking about what are the factors that may lead to this poor fruit set from a good flowering. Harley presented on his fruit precision project and opportunities for managing precision. We also had Vera from Israel presenting on work that they've done on alternate bearing cycles, so the effects of fruit load on floral initiation and development in the Hass, and some of the new insights they've had in that work. So this is our document. Hopefully some of you have actually seen it. Do we? Oh, and Renata said we do have some copies up the back if you'd like to look at it later. This is just one of the preliminary pages in the document, and I apologise, we worked out yesterday afternoon that the text is a little bit small for our screen today, but in any case I'll be just summarising a few points. So the overall purpose of the roadmap is to inform and guide future investments in this area of consistency of avocado production. We've identified all of the range of strategic plans where that have also identified that this is an issue. One of the things that the group decided at the workshop was that we had to really draw a line around what we would include in this research strategy and what we would not include in this research strategy, because there are just so many things that affect consistency of production in avocado. The way that we decided to do that was that we decided that we would not include areas of factors that affected reproductive development of avocados indirectly via tree health or via stress. So what this means is factors that aren't considered include irrigation and phytophthora. Now this can be a little bit controversial. We're not saying that phytophthora and irrigation are not important. We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is that these areas that indirectly affect yield consistency are being dealt with in other research programs, so we won't deal with them here. Again, yeah, the group also decided at the workshop that there was a fair bit of evidence that these terms such as irregular bearing and alternate bearing were probably a little bit confusing and maybe being a little bit misused. And one way to get around that was to stop talking about them and to instead talk about yield consistency and talk about the key impacts or key impact areas within the crop production system. So the 4 areas, impact areas that we decided upon were floral initiation and development, pollination and fruit set, fruit development and retention, and vegetative growth and canopies. And we decided as a group that all of the areas that affect reproductive development and avocado can be summarised within those 4 impact areas. When we talk about those impact areas, it's a lot more clear what we're talking about as opposed to talking about irregular bearing, alternate bearing, what's included in is that irregular bearing or is that alternate bearing? In some ways it doesn't really matter. It's about yield consistency. So this is what the main research strategy part of the document essentially looks like, the investment priorities. And as I said, broken up into these 4 impact areas using the example of the floral initiation and development here. Each of these investment priorities has been broken up into a problem or an issue. So what's the problem that we're dealing with? What are the strategies that we may be able to use to overcome that problem? And if a project is undertaken on that problem, what are the deliverables from that project that we may expect? We also tried to estimate a time frame on these investments. Is it an extension investment? Is it short, medium, long-term investment? Yeah, again, apologies for the text size. What I'm going to do with the amount of time that I've got left is try and summarise the main areas that we identified in these 4 impact areas. If you're particularly interested in it afterwards, I suggest getting a copy of the roadmap and looking at it at your leisure. So, surprise, surprise, the key problem in floral initiation and development is poor flowering, and that essentially encompasses the main problem that we found. So it's well known that harvest time and crop load can affect subsequent flowering, but the group felt that this wasn't well enough understood, particularly in terms of the regional influences. There was most likely, there is a carbohydrate impact on this effective crop load and late harvesting, but again, that's not particularly well understood. So the strategies are to, further investigate effects of crop load, harvest timing in the different regions, how carbohydrate petitioning affects that, and can any of this be improved? There was also There was also a canopy aspect to this. It was felt that the canopy management side and canopy structure impacts on flowering intensity were not well known, and potentially flowering regularity could be improved by better understanding canopy management. The second area is pollination and fruit set. This first section up here is to do with flower quality. It's well understood that flower quality can impact fruit set, particularly in terms, and one of the main things we talk about in terms of flower quality is the carbohydrate content of the flowers. What is not particularly well understood is how flower quality can be manipulated, what factors are affecting flower quality. So, one opportunity there, it was identified that better understanding flower quality and how to manipulate it may lead to improvements in fruit set. The next section here is around the effect of climate at flowering on fruit set. So this area has been well documented over the years. It's well known the effect that cool and warm temperatures have on pollination and fruit set, but there are limited tools to manage this. One area that was identified was the potential to investigate possibility of increasing the length of time of flower pistil viability. And the other opportunity was just looking at how different, how you could impact orchard microclimate. The next area here was insufficient understanding of the impact of pollinisers on productivity and profitability. The group decided that, yes, quite a bit of work has been done on this over the years. It is known that pollinisers in many regions and locations will improve fruit set and productivity, but the specifics, it was felt that the specifics were unknown. So how many should I be putting in? How is this going to affect profitability overall? So the deliverable there is a quantitative understanding of productivity and profitability impact of pollinisers in different regions. I'll just take a quick step back here. This is one area that's really more focused on specifics and grower-focused outcomes. One of the outcomes of the workshop was the group really believed that many areas of avocado production, the basic knowledge, physiological knowledge had not been developed, and there was a lot of basic understanding to develop in the research programs. It wasn't always the case, but many areas it was felt the basic understanding was not just there, and that needed to be developed before the grower-focused outcomes could be worked on. And I should stress there that just as many growers in the room as scientists, so it wasn't the scientists pushing that angle. The next area we have here is suboptimal pollen transfer. So pollinators, pollen and nectar attractiveness, how can this be influenced? Again, there were a couple of practical areas that made it in here, just around bee stocking rates and timings. Had a few discussions with people who've said, you know, a lot of this work's been done, why would you do it again? The group felt that there was knowledge there that still needed to be developed, particularly for individual growing regions. Our third impact area is fruit development and retention. So most of this can be summarised just by the limited ability to manage fruit retention and development, and there are a range of areas within that. First of all, it was felt that there was a lack of understanding of relationships between flowering, fruit set and abscission. So if I've got a heavy flowering, how's that going to affect my fruit set and crop load? If I've got a light flowering, how's that going to affect my crop load? How's that going to affect my growth? And how do these vary with growing regions? Lack of tools to manage abscission or to try and keep fruit on trees. Carbohydrates came up here again in terms of these cycles. Lack of understanding of carbohydrate partitioning, signalling and storage across different stages and different growing, how does this vary with different growing regions. If we did decided we could manipulate carbohydrates, do we have the tools to be able to measure the carbohydrates in the trees to make these decisions? The other thing that came up in terms of limited ability to manage fruit set and fruit retention is that, do we know what yield we should be aiming for in a particular region? Do we know what the sustainable carrying capacity for an avocado orchard is in each of our growing regions? The group felt that wasn't understood and that there may be benefits in understanding that. A lot of this is around developing physiological understanding in terms of these cycles and carbohydrate partitioning. But there was also this strategy of developing the rapid carbohydrate measurement tool. The last section here is a little bit different. It was felt by the group that HASS does have considerable issues in terms of yield variability. We decided as a group to keep breeding out of this. So this is not, the solution to HASS is not to breed a new variety. The higher tech solution may be to, Harley will have to tell me if I get this right, undertake DNA-free gene editing. So he may want to explain that later, to try and get a different version of HASS, which has less issues in terms of consistency of production. The idea was that you wouldn't step fully into this, you may just develop a proof of concept before going further into this idea. The last area is vegetative growth and canopies. Our first section within this is at a canopy scale. It's felt that the effect of canopies and canopy management on yield consistency or yield variability are not well understood. There's a wide range of current pruning practices, and these effects are probably on yield consistency are probably not well understood. So the strategies are to develop understanding of pruning strategies on high and consistent production, understand the effects of light and canopy structures. The next one is about nitrogen. So the feeling from the group was that, nitrogen does have an impact on vegetative growth. There appears to be a high level of understanding by consultants on nitrogen fertilisation and how this affects growth and development in different regions, but there's not a whole lot of scientific understanding on this issue. One of the interesting things about nitrogen, when we were talking about nitrogen at the workshop, was depending on which growing region you're from, you may be concerned about how your nitrogen fertilisation is going to lead to excessive growth, or you may be concerned about how your nitrogen fertilisation may not allow you to achieve the growth you require to overcome yield consistency issues. So very wide-ranging potential issues here, which probably haven't been particularly well investigated in the past. and there may be opportunities in better understanding this to create a better balance between vegetative growth and reproductive growth and fruiting. Back to carbohydrates again. It's felt that the problem was limited ability to manipulate carbohydrate partitioning away from vegetative growth to reproductive development. So this is sort of more likely focused on regions where excessive growth is potentially an issue. Along with this, it was felt that PGR potential is not maximised. So the thought was investigate methods to modify allocation of carbohydrate resources with the aim of directing them towards productivity, and also doing some future studies on optimising PGR use. Another issue was it was felt that there's a lack of understanding of leaf function. So we know with avocados, particularly in certain growing regions, we have new leaves developing in the spring, and then over winter, most of this canopy is going to fall away. We do have differences in leaf function throughout the life of these leaves. How is this affecting photosynthesis of the canopy and production of carbohydrates? So it was felt that there would be opportunities there to improve production of carbon in the tree. So our key take-home points. We tried to, and I think we did, undertake a rigorous process to develop the roadmap. High level of industry consultation, high level of scientific input. We've tried to change the terminology to talk about yield consistency and our 4 key crop impact areas instead of talking about irregular and alternate bearing. As you can see from the summary of the 4 impact areas, yield consistency is very complex in avocados. There are many factors that affect it, and these vary with region and orchard characteristics. I'm here for the whole day, so if you've got any specific questions, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.